What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Good With Project. I'm your host, Jerry Scarlato, and today's conversation is with Jami Truman. Jami is the co-founder of Truman Charities, along with her husband, Jerry, as well as the host of the Truman Charities Podcast and author of the book, Vanishing Fathers. Her goal with the book, Vanishing Fathers, is to help boys be able to understand the importance of fatherhood. If you haven't noticed, there is an epidemic of fatherless homes or broken homes. And because of that, that causes huge impacts for both boys and girls. So this book is very timely and I think very impactful. Along with that, we talk about her business ventures that she had in her mid 20s or in her throughout her 20s. She had a fitness business, an in-home personal training business, which is very near and dear to my heart. Not that I did in-home training, but certainly was in the fitness business for a long time. And she had a marketing business as well. And being able to do both of those things help her now run Truman Charities. She does that with other board members, but Truman Charities is her nonprofit organization that she started with her husband that has three major events each year to raise money for different charities. They choose a different charity each year for the events. And she's just having such a huge impact on many different people in many different ways because of the things that she's doing. So, a lot of lessons to be learned throughout this conversation, both from how you can take your childhood, hardships and traumas and learn from them to how you can grow and expand and effectively put together a nonprofit organization and everywhere in between. So enjoy this conversation. Get out your pen and paper. Here is Jami Truman. Jami, great to have you on the show. We have a lot to talk about today because from the sounds of it, I just got finished. I'm not completely finished with your book, but I'm 3/4 of the way through. And you have a lot of your life story in there. At least it's a truncated version of what you went through in your early days. So before we jump into the book itself, or at least what inspired you to get the book out, I want to jump into those early days. So can you give a little bit of the backstory of your father and kind of your early childhood?
Well, yes, Jerry, thanks, of course, for having me on. So the book has been out, debuted in March, Vanishing Fathers, A Ripple Effect on Tomorrow's Generation, which has been great because 100% of the proceeds go to charities. So as of right now, we've raised close to $80,000 for
Oh, wow.
at-risk charity. Yeah.
That's incredible.
So it's really great. I've had wonderful responses from it. And so what I wanted to do was speak about an issue that I started to notice a lot when I had started my podcast. And I was talking to different nonprofit founders, and I spoke to, thought leaders in the community, and I spoke to over like 100, I guess 120 people at this point. And it kept coming up, this whole lack of father involvement within a child's life, and that was leading to all types of issues as they were growing old, as they got older, into substance abuse, and girls being and was it girls high school dropouts. We have homeless youth, exploited women, as far as I was trying to get to, and then teen pregnancy.
Mm.
And so it seemed that this continuously kept coming up. And I had never really thought too much about it until I started interviewing all of these different individuals, because I grew up and my father wasn't around very much. He was in and out of jail. I was incarcerated quite a bit throughout my childhood. He had it started out with an alcohol issue, and then he started to then abuse heroin. And so he would, when he was doing well and was in recovery, he was great and, a great guy. But then, his substance abuse issues just caused him to not be around. And then unfortunately, when I was around, this was eighth grade or seventh or eighth grade, um, I I realized that, or my mother took us out and let us know that he was HIV positive at that point. So by the time I was 20, he had full-blown AIDS, and because of his, you know, abuse with his substance abuse issues, his body just kind of shut down. So he passed away when I was 20 years old.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that you learned a lot from your mom during that time, at least as far as how she dealt with things. I'm gonna assume, and you can correct me as much as you need to, that you maybe learned a lot of your built a lot of resilience based on how she responded to the whole situation. So I don't know. What do you remember learning from her as y'all were going through this?
Well, my mom, so I'm one of six children.
Oh wow.
And yes, and so she was a single mom as well. And she was just a really hard worker and just somebody that wasn't, a victim mentality, this be always look at there has to be a positive and something always, and to kind of try to look at the positive side of things. And I think that her watching her, so when I was younger, she was, I think, 24, 23, 24 when she had me, and I was the third. I had two older brothers. And watching her, working two jobs, getting herself through school, becoming a nurse and becoming very successful in that, was really, I think it was great for kids to see. You don't realize it until you're older, but just like working to make yourself in a better place. And she did such a great job of that. She made sure that we were in a community where, and I say that there's a lot of reasons I think why I didn't end up at the same as my father and some of my other relatives, is really she put me in a great area. So when I was going to school, you know, having a dad that was incarcerated was kind of unheard of, right? That just wasn't something that every other kid had. Now, see, if we would have grown up, would have been a lot easier for my mom to grow up in the area that my father grew up in, that she grew up in. And that was something that a lot of kids were dealing with. And that is something that, wasn't uncommon. And having a dad that has, substance abuse issues just wasn't uncommon. Having a dad not around wasn't uncommon. Where I went to school and all of my friends, that was very uncommon. So I think also being able to see, you are kind of who you hang with, is what my grandmother used to say.
Yeah.
So me hanging around all of these different girls that had great relationships with their dad, even if their parents were divorced, they had these strong relationships. And so I knew that what I had wasn't normal, and it wasn't something that I wanted, growing up. I wanted to make sure, that I would hopefully, marry somebody that was, I loved my dad, but very different from him.
Well, I think it's been apparent, having interviewed enough people over the last year and a half, having the podcast, and then of course, just interactions with people in general. When you grow up in a situation like that, when you grow up in any situation that could lead you down two very opposing paths, either you end up on the far side of it where you come out really strong, really resilient, or you end up on the other far side of it where you come out where you would expect that person to come out, right? Somebody who has an abusive dad or somebody who has an addicted dad, father, if they ended up as an addict, most people would go, yeah, well, that makes sense. But if they end up on the other side, they're kind of surprised. But it's been revealing to see how it's like a lot of people who are successful in whatever area, whether that's family, whether that's financial, whether that's business, a lot of them grew up in hardship, whether that is, in a broken family or whether that's just, they didn't grow up financially well off or whatever the reason. So, the fact that you were able to kind of pay attention to your friends and be able to go, okay, I don't have to end up like my father. That's pretty incredible at such a young age.
Well, I mentioned in my book too about my cousin who I grew up with, and so she actually lived in the same area, and it's a very under-resourced area right outside of Baltimore City. And she grew up right like a couple minutes from my father. We were great friends growing up, very, very close. She was not as fortunate as I was. And so she ended up getting involved in, drugs when she was younger, probably 15, 16 years old, and then ended up prostituting down in Baltimore City, and then passed away at 19 years old. So you can easily see when I talk to people and they're like, well, I was like, it's very easy to see because there's two people that had, her dad also was had substance abuse issues as well. My dad did as well. But then you just see kind of the difference between who I grew up around. And then, so I could see that it wasn't normal. She didn't see that. So I do kind of say, I'm like, well, it's kind of a clear example when you look at the two of us of like what happened.
For sure. And it was obvious in the book you mentioned there's just a paragraph where you said, "Oh, I have an addictive personality. I drank a little bit when I was young. I smoked when I was young." But you were always able to flip those things around and not continue down that rabbit hole. So you caught on to that early. What do you think, even though you have this going on with your friends and you recognize that you wanted to stay on the bright side of things, you still partied sometimes like all teenage something or others would. I mean, that's not unusual, but how do you think that you were able to stay away from uh continuing down that rabbit hole?
I really think it was is that my friends looked at people that were doing hard drugs as like, ugh. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like they had aspirations, they had dreams, they wanted to go, they wanted to go to college or they wanted to start a business. That just wasn't something that they were interested in doing. And when they saw people that started going down that path, they stopped associating with them. So it just wasn't something that was in my community of friends. And I think that made it really easy because I do remember, when I was, drinking and smoking like too much. And I woke up and I was like, this is so gross. Like, what
Mm.
am I like, what am I doing? And my friend's like, yeah. Yeah, it's like you like get, you know, get back to going to school, back to focusing on what you're supposed to be doing. Like, this isn't the type of life that you want because if you do, look at the consequences of that. And I also thought, also for me, because personally, since my dad had contracted HIV, and so he was dealing with that, I was always terrified of like strong drugs, or anything like that. That just was like really scary to me.
For sure. I mean, and as well it would be. So at least you had that kind of in your mind to always stay away from and to not, you know, go down that hole. But
Right.
again, pretty incredible. It kind of sounds like peer pressure in reverse a little bit.
Like
Most
positive
people's right.
positive peer pressure.
Yeah, 100% for sure. Which peer pressure can be taken any way. I mean, it was just peer pressure is all it was, but good peer pressure. So that's
Right.
that's very cool. Um, so you also, once you got into college or once you got out of college, maybe, you started a couple businesses. What got you going down that way? So one was a fitness business, one was maybe a marketing business, or maybe they were the same. I don't really remember, but you can clarify for me.
So once my dad had passed away, I wanted something to be able to kind of deal with the grief in a positive way. So I decided that I was going to run a marathon. And at the time, the Marine Corps Marathon in DC had a charitable component to it. And they were raising money for the Whitman Walker Clinic, which was helping people in the DC area that were living with HIV and AIDS. So I decided, which I don't know why I decided to do this, because at that point, I don't think I'd run around like the cul-de-sac twice. So I was like, all right, I'm going to run this marathon and I'm going to raise money. And this was when I was still in college and I ran that marathon and I'd raised money by doing like car washes and stuff like that. And so after I ran it, I felt like it was like the best type of way to kind of go through like the grieving process because you had all of these hours of time where you're running and you can kind of think through things. And then it becomes sort of like a meditation type of practice. And you also get that high, that natural high, as we all know, like the endorphins from running and from exercising are kind of like a natural antidepressant and anti-anxiety. So I felt great. And so after that, I decided that I wanted to start a fitness business. And then I was also going to help people that wanted to run marathons for different causes that meant something to them. So I started my fitness business. And then also, while had my clients and I had other trainers that were working on the side, I would help people train for different marathons. And then I had started my marketing business a few years later. That was after college. And so I had those up until I had my son. So, yeah.
Marketing, where does marketing come from? Just out of curiosity.
So I was already doing, so it was funny. I was like, well, I would do my fitness business in like the mornings. And so I had about like 20 different trainers that worked for me. And we all did like at home training. And then I would do all my training from like 4:30 in the morning to like 9:30. And then I had marketing clients, which was like Pepsi, Dasani, had a whole bunch, Heineken, all of these different clients where then I did marketing for them at and they were all like West Coast, so their headquarters didn't open. So like by
Mhm.
the time that I was like ready to like start answering emails and stuff, I had already finished my one.
Yep.
But I kind of fell into marketing because I was doing the fitness. I was already doing that kind of marketing. I had been doing a lot of print work. So that's kind of, you know, somewhat type modeling work, but you're not like a real model. You're just doing like print ads and things like that. So then I kind of fell into that. And then I saw that there was a lot of girls that were doing like promo, like those promos for like you'd see the girls like walking around doing those. Anyways, somebody asked me if I wanted to help them with like the mid-Atlantic and start helping with those, not actually being one of the girls, but kind of casting and doing all of that, like the scheduling, kind of like a staffing company in a way. So then I did that. Then I just went ahead and I was like, you know what? I think I can do it better than this company. So then I just put in a bid the next year for me to do it. And then so then I absorbed that. And then from them, I bid out to other contracts and got those.
Oh wow,
So and
super cool.
it was really fun. I mean, it's
Mhm.
7 days a week working, but it was fun. They were both cool because this was before. Now you don't see it a lot of more like that guerrilla style marketing.
Mhm.
Not a lot of uh different contracts where we would do like really cool kind of stuff, guerrilla stuff marketing and with the big trucks and all that kind of fun stuff. So you don't see that as much anymore. I think the kind of marketing has changed. It's more on like how
Yep.
many followers do you have on social media and what you can do on there. But before, I guess, all the social media blew up. It was a
Yeah.
fun way to market.
Well, and I can only imagine that was a lot more entertaining. You got to just be out more. It was a little
Uh-huh.
more creative, maybe a different kind of creative, but still a different level of creativity because you had to come up with like different campaign structures and like, oh, we're going to include this balloon for this thing, and the guy's going to fly out of the balloon, and this is going to happen, or maybe we're going to go do this paper flyer thing, and anyway,
Yeah.
I would imagine it was a lot cooler in a sense that you just got to come up with a lot of different kind of campaigns.
Yeah, it was really fun. I had a great time. A lot of work, but a lot of fun.
Very cool. I can empathize going back to your running experience and how that helped you recover from your grief from your father. I can empathize with that as well. Last year I closed a business and got divorced all within about a 3 month period of time. Had the business for 10 years, was married for 10 years. And anyway, it just all changed with the 3 months. So one of the things that I did during that time was, I've been training for 25 years in the weight room, and
Hmm.
I'm a walker. I do that relatively regularly. But one of the things that I did to help me was took up hiking and rucking more often. So rucking is just hiking with a heavy backpack on. And every day I'd go and for an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes longer, I would just go and ruck and do the same thing. It gave me an opportunity to think through things, which was super helpful because I think without
Hmm.
that processing time, you'll tend to just kind of drive yourself crazy. And yeah, I mean, it helped raise my spirits, if you will, literally through the endorphins and neurotransmitters and all of that fun stuff. So I mean, I can certainly empathize with that, and I would say anybody listening to this who's having any trouble with anything, certainly exercise is a great I mean, there's just no better way to kind of start to lift your spirits. That shows anecdotally and it shows through research. So that's
Hmm.
very cool that you saw that and that you kind of caught on to that.
Yeah, I mean, like still to this day, I work out, 6 days a week. And it becomes that seventh day where you have like your rest day is like the hard day for me to like have to rest. Cause it really is something great. Like I have two kids. Well, I have a stepson and then I have two kids with my husband. And it is I can't tell you how much it helps me be like a better mother and wife because it really does level you out. So I can tell if I go like 2 days, I'm sure this is with you too. Like if you go like a couple days and you haven't worked out, I see my personality kind of shifting and my level of tolerance and, for like my 4-year-old is a lot less. So it is, I really do think it's something. And for me, when I have something that's going on, and I'm sure you could feel the same way, that if you have a problem or something's really bothering you, if you just get like a really good workout, it just clears your mind. So it helps you think.
Oh, fully. Yeah. Well, I mean, even now, so, the divorce and the business closing. I closed the business on Thanksgiving Day last year, got divorced. I think the divorce was actually technically final at the beginning of this year in January. So, even to this day, there's certainly days where I'm just like, you just kind of feel whatever, blah.
Hmm.
And so during those days, it's walking and rucking time. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna just go and spend time outside, go find a trail and just walk and just let my mind clear. A lot of people kind of look at that as a waste, but I'm like, no, I mean, there's no if it keeps you from going down a rabbit hole and maybe wasting a half of a day or a whole day or a week potentially feeling bad about things and just letting that gloominess stick around, then no, I mean, you're just there's no better way to benefit yourself.
Hmm. Absolutely.
So then tell me about so what's I am curious. So my mind went to fitness and then back over here and then back to fitness. So I could talk about that all day long.
I know.
Um, the business was a fitness studio, so like that's just what I've done my whole
Ah,
life. Yes.
wow.
Um, You had 20 trainers. You said you did in-person, in-home training, like
Hmm.
in-home personal training, or you recorded videos. That was before recording videos was a thing. So
Yeah.
you went, you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
So you did in-home training. That's super cool. Well,
Hmm.
how'd you come up? I don't say you came up with that idea, but how did you start to get into in-home training? Because personal training's been around for a long time, but in-home training isn't. I mean, it's relatively new concept. What's up, guys? I want to jump in here real quick and talk to you about achieving your goals. If you're listening to this podcast, then I know you want to achieve something extraordinary in life, whether that's building a business, getting in the best shape possible, or maximizing your time with your family. And if you want to do any of those things, there's two things you need to be able to master. One of them is time, and the other one is productivity. It starts with managing your time and being able to eliminate the things that are getting in your way so that then you can set your goals and start to break them down into actionable steps and take those steps and interject them into your life so that you can take action and turn those dreams into reality. And in order to help you do that, I created the Alpha Life Action Plan. It's literally a 90-day action plan that does both of those things. Starts with taking your time, figuring out where you're spending it, eliminating the things or delegating the things that you don't need to do so that you can free up your time to then set your goals and break them down into action steps and start to take action on them so that you can achieve the things that you want in life. The Alpha Life Action Plan is yours for free. All you have to do is cover shipping. You can go to goodwolfproject.us/action plan and put in your information there and have it sent to you ASAP. That's goodwolfproject.us/action plan so you can start to take action on those goals and dreams you want to create the life that you deserve.
Well, so I was doing an internship in college at a gym, and when I was there and I saw like the split, and I was like, this is great, and the gym's great. However, I don't want like the split was just it wasn't that great. I mean, it was all right. But then I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, this was one of those really big gyms, and there was a couple of them. And then I looked at like smaller gyms and how hard that is to keep those afloat. And so I thought, all right, well, let me do this. I will do at home training. I'll start with myself in this area. and I'll do that. Then what I'll do is I'll purchase equipment, right, for the trainers, and the ones, bands and stuff like that. And I'll
Basic stuff,
have,
right?
yeah, like I'll have like a storage unit filled with that, and I'll have trainers that'll come pick the stuff up that they need, go to, and then they would have specific areas, and then I would just get a small percentage of everything that they do. But then there's no overhead. So my overhead was
Yeah.
a storage unit, and
Yeah,
some equipment.
for
So
sure.
it was relatively like easy for someone who, I was paying through college, like I was paying my way through college. So I was in college when I started this. And so it was relatively like easy for me just to start this with very low cost.
How did you market that? How did you expand that? Because like you said, social media wasn't really around back then. So
It
how
really
do you,
wasn't.
yeah. So how do you expand an in-home personal training business at the
Oh,
time?
this So how I started is really funny because if you were to think about it now, you're like, I think about Craigslist and I think of the Craigslist killer and just a
Yeah.
bunch of weirdos.
Yeah.
But I honestly started on Craigslist
That's
and I
great.
ended up getting one of my best clients, and he was extremely successful businessman who owned a franchise. And so he had very wealthy friends. And so then I was able kind of to like get into that group of people. But it all started from like a Craigslist ad,
That's too
which
funny.
is hilarious. I mean, I definitely got some weird people responding back, but I did that. And then it was just ended up word of mouth. But then I also ended up going to like corporate offices that had a gym and offering for a trainer to come into there so that I would market for that particular area for that one. And then I would get a trainer to come in to see different people before or after work at that like office. And so then I had office buildings that I did
That's
that.
smart.
And that was just like me walking in
Mm.
and just trying to find someone to talk to. And eventually I got to who I needed to talk to and then
That's
kind of made my way that way.
yeah, that's smart. That's the old school hoofing around and shaking
Old
hands.
school. Yep. Old school going in, people telling you to go away, keep
Yeah.
going and going and going. Yeah.
All right. No, that's too cool. Well, that finding the group, the thing your grandma told you. I think you said your grandma told you to make sure you hang around with the right people. Well, you happen to find the right guy, or the right guy found you, and he had a bunch of friends that also wanted training. So, I mean, that's like just a perfect example of that as well, to a degree. Granted, that was by accident, but nonetheless, I mean, that worked out real well. But that's super cool. I'm always intrigued to hear how people kind of grow their, especially early on. In your 20s, whenever you're growing a business, it's different than when you're in your 30s or 40s. In your 30s and 40s, you're much more strategic about it. In your 20s, you're like, damn, I got to make some money. How do I start? How do I find somebody? Craigslist, perfect. Let's throw something on Craigslist.
Oh, you know what? You know what I used to do too? I used to get this is how old school it was. Because I mean, I'm 41 and I was 19 or 20 at the time when I started this. I used to go get signs made, like you could order online with the stakes. And then I would at like 1 o'clock in the morning would get in my car and like drive around so I could like hurry up and like get out of the car so I wouldn't get like run over and put them like in the middle of intersections. like
That's
like so old school.
That's too good.
But it
That's too
worked.
good. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there's still some of that stuff going on, most definitely. I would venture to say if especially local businesses spent more time doing that kind of stuff than maybe on Facebook or social media. Not that that can't be useful for a small business or local business. Certainly it can, but you would be surprised at the impact it have on your business because you don't see it as much anymore. Then it's novel, and people like novel. People like new
Hmm.
things. So if you went back to that route, I think a lot of people would respond well to it. Uh, Maybe not the door knocking, maybe not that part, but
Yeah.
other novel ideas.
Yeah, I did
Um,
those too. I did flyers. I mean, I did it all. Like
oh
on the
yeah, for
doorknobs, the
sure.
whole thing.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so let's talk about the charity a little bit.
Hmm.
So you started the charity, Truman Charities, right? You
So I'm the co-founder of Truman Charities, and we've been around for 15 years. And we have 3 annual events per year: of annual Halloween, Derby party, and a family fun event. We've raised a little over
a
$2 million
derby party?
dollars. Yeah,
Where are you
Derby.
guys? Where are you?
Um, I'm in Maryland, but it's always fun to have a derby party.
I'm in
So
Kentucky and I'm like, oh, derby party. I don't know. I'm just kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
it's because you probably are inundated with it.
It's
So
true. That's
people
very true.
not in
No, I'm
Kentucky
kidding. I'm
find
kidding.
it
No,
fun.
okay.
Even though I've been twice, I loved it. I loved going.
Oh yeah, people are super ate up about it around here.
Oh,
It's a huge. It's such a big thing for sure.
oh, I loved going.
Mm.
So we have those three events. We've raised a little over $2 million since we started. We're 100% volunteer based, like I mentioned. And so I was doing in my 20s as helping people, run different marathons. And then I met my husband, and he had actually just started Truman Charities like the year prior. So he ran for Man of the Year for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, LLS. And it's like a 6 or 8 week, like intensive, like fundraising. So you try to do as much fundraising you can within like 6 to 8 weeks. He had raised like a little over $100,000, which was amazing. And he did, which was great. He actually didn't win. Somebody else did way better, which is just so inspiring to me
Mhm.
that you're able to do that in 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
But so then he had done that, and then he kind of wanted to do something else. And one of his good friends was in remission from leukemia, and she was doing this Light the Night Walk that LLS does. She asked him to be a sponsor, and he was like, of course. He's like, but let me see what else I can do. Let me see if I can do something else. So he had his first event, and it was just sort of like, solo cups, cooking out. Here's a bowl, throw some checks or cash in. Let's see how much we can raise for her. And he raised a little over $8,000 that one event. And it's amazing since that first event to now, we have, board members. It's very kind of runs like a business now. And our largest event we had last year, we raised $117,000. So it's really great. So we went from like 8,000 from that first little event to now it's these, big, awesome events that people look forward to, and we're raising a lot more money.
That's incredible. So three events. Your biggest one last year, 117. You said that is super incredible. And you may have said this, and maybe I just blacked out during that time. But what is the basis? Do you decide where the money goes? What happens? Like what happens
So
after the events?
around this time of year, what myself, my husband, and our other board members, we get together and we figure out what charities that we want to host events for. So what we do is that my husband and I, as our kind of donation to the charity, is we host the event. So 100% of the money raised goes directly to that charity, and we don't handle any of that. So when you're purchasing your ticket to come, that's going to say For the Kids. That's our Halloween party. That is the charity that we're benefiting this year. So that's kind of that's how it works with us. Is each year we pick three different ones, except for the Family Fun is for just trying it. They host a kids triathlon every year. So my littlest one can't participate, but my 6-year-old participates in it, and my stepson did. And it's a charity that helps local families here. They provide financial assistance for them for families that have a child in treatment for pediatric cancer. So that one is our steady family fun one's just that, and then we rotate of
The other
different
two.
charities. Yeah, on the other two.
Oh, very cool. I imagine it's a lot of work putting those kind of events together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that's all volunteer work.
Mm-hmm.
And then any you can get things donated probably relatively easily whenever you're doing a charity event, something like that. How have you enjoyed putting the events together? Is that something that's like up your alley? I mean, assuming you did the marketing thing back in the day, have a feeling it's somewhat up your alley.
Right. So it's interesting because when we first started, the first early years, it wasn't turnkey yet. We hadn't really figured out like how to do. No, one second.
Oh, you're good.
Oh my gosh.
I get it.
Hadn't figured out how to, do it efficiently. And then we started adding board members, and they each are really good at specific tasks to make it easier for us. So for instance, I do social media, the newsletter, and I do our podcast. My husband, he's the one that's best friends with every single person he's ever met, right? He's the guy that knows everybody. And he's really the one that does a lot of the heavy lifting for all of our auction items. Because we don't do any consignment items. So consignment means like, say I got some sort of autograph something or whatever, and you have to pay like a certain amount goes back to that person who donated to it, or not donated, but gave it to you guys or whatever company. We don't do that. Everything that we get is 100% donated. So all of the money, say you got something that was like $1,500 goes to the charity. So he does all the heavy lifting on that. I have a wonderful board member, Julie. She has Sassy Agency, and that's an actually marketing company. So she does all of our amazing marketing materials, websites, like all of everything to make sure it's super, like everything makes sense, and does her logo and all that great stuff. And then we have somebody that just deals with the event of that day. She does all the admin stuff, which I'm not really good at, like the back end stuff and getting everything organized and the spreadsheets and all that. And then we have somebody that deals with the venue. So what we did, which is great. So one of our big mistakes that we did is, so we used to have them at our house. Then my husband and I had a baby, at our first baby, and we had one event and my son was 3 months old, and I looked at my husband and I was like, never
No
again.
more.
We're all done. And it rips your house apart when you have like 150 people in your house, right? 3 times a year, it's a much. So then we started going to like different venues, and we're like, this isn't making it easy. Everything's volunteer, so we have to keep this very easy, and we have to keep it cost effective, so that my husband and I are able to cover the event. So we found, which is great, a guy that my husband's friends with. He owns this really cool bar, Tommy Joe's. And so we're like, you know what? Let's just have it there every single time for our 2 annual, like the Halloween and the Derby party. Let's have it here. Let's keep it simple. We're dealing with the same guy. He's involved in Truman Charities. So he gives us a great deal on the food and the beverages and stuff like that. And so those are the things that you really have to think about. Because when we did one event, and we were doing it for Kind, which helps kids that are on the free and reduced lunch program. So we thought, and we were having it at our house, and we thought, oh, how cute would it be if we did like themed food? So like themed little buses or whatever it was. Oh my gosh. Terrible mistake. We tried to make it cute. It was like way too expensive. And then our house was like on fire. It was because there was so much stuff that had to be in the oven and using the oven. Everybody's sweating. It was terrible. It's like, oh my gosh. Like these are the things that you think about that you shouldn't, that seem like a good idea. And then like the execution, you're like, oh my gosh, just keep it simple. Keep it simple, keep it uniformed, and then it makes everything so much easier, you know?
For sure. You got somebody with you.
And my 4-year-old's crying outside of the door.
Oh, that's all
Oh.
good. That's all good. No, that's super cool. It sounds like you have done a great job of resourcing people, finding people with
Mhm.
diverse talents, which is super important because I think what a lot of businesses, charities, or any group gets in trouble with is you got a couple people who have the same talent, and then one random person who has a different talent, and then another person who has a different talent. So you got 3 people maybe who have the same talent, and it's like you just need one of them. So the
Mhm.
fact that you were able to, or not able to, you were smart enough to go, hey, we need somebody for this group, or this thing, and this thing, and then kind of pulled them together. And then also the streamlining thing, that's super good. I'm very much a project or a sequence oriented kind of person, planning kind of person. So streamlining it, I'm sure made your life much easier.
Oh yeah, my husband, it was, gosh, at this point it's probably like 7 or 8 years ago or something. But he's like, I can't continue to do this. We need to make this more efficient. We need to make it work like I run my business. I run my business efficiently. This has to run efficiently too. So we're not wasting everybody's time too, because all of these board members, they're very busy themselves. They're all run their own businesses. So you have to keep it really, like I mentioned, like very like turnkey, efficient, just like you would run a business. You run the organization that way.
No doubt. All right, sister. Well, I will let you get to your duties. This is a great, quick conversation. Like we said beforehand, we'll talk quickly, and I think I think we got a good amount in about 40 minutes or so. But at any rate, where can people find you, and where can people find Vanishing Fathers?
Great. So Vanishing Fathers, The Ripple Effect on Tomorrow's Generation is a great book. And we didn't mention my story is just one out of so many, and it's people from all different backgrounds. And you get to hear everyone's story about how they were affected by either having a father that was not around, or a father with abuse, substance abuse or physical abusive to him. And then you see how and these are mostly, I talked to 2 women as well, but there was mostly men that I spoke about in the book, and how they were able to overcome that. And most of them are fathers themselves, very loving fathers, and and do a lot within their community as well. So I think it's a really great book for boys. I don't think boys are told enough, like how important they are within the family unit. And so what I wanted to achieve with this book is I wanted all, like, for a young man to read this book and realize how extremely valuable they are within society and valuable within the family unit, and that the mother and father are different and both necessary to have a really great upbringing, for a child. They do have that kind of perfect yin and yang there. And I know, my mom, as I mentioned, was a single mom. And I mean, that's the hardest job in the world. She has to try to be 2 people. And I want young men to realize just they need, like, how important they are. So I really hope everybody goes to get that. 100% of the proceeds go directly to charity. As I said, we've raised close to 80,000 so far. That's great. You can find it on Amazon, any online bookstore. I have the Truman Charities Podcast, easy on all podcast platforms. I talked to nonprofit leaders, thought leaders. I've talked to New York Times bestselling authors and some successful people that were in the music business and Everclear, and people that are just so many great stories. So definitely check that out. You can find Truman Charities, very simple. Instagram, I'm at Jami_Truman Charities. Facebook, Truman Charities. And then you can just find us, trumancharities.com.
Simple enough. I like it. I'll put
Uh-huh.
it all in the description either way. But Jami, thank you so much. Great
Oh, gosh,
conversation.
thank
Appreciate your
you.
time.
Of course. Thanks so much.